Hello, this is Bob Steele. In this video, we will continue on Chapter 4, Learning Objective 4, which is to compare the cost per equivalent unit under the weighted average method of process costing. So before we go forward, I'm going to take one slide back and take a look at this worksheet here. We are looking at the physical units on this side. This is the physical units in terms of the flow of units. Then we're looking at the physical units in terms of how much was transferred out versus how much is still in our department. Our department, remember, being the cutting department. We make, I'm thinking about gloves here that we make, and then they go to the stitching department, baseball gloves. So then we have this section over here where we're talking about equivalent units. So equivalent units in terms of how much is still in there versus how much was transferred out. The stuff that were transferred out, we're going to assume that 100% of the work was basically done during this time period. This is actually kind of an average method. That's why we're making this assumption. So we're going to say that 100% of the materials and the conversion were in there during this time period in terms of the stuff that got transferred out to the next department, the cutting department. And that's because of the weighted average method, which is a bit more simplified than the FIFO method. And then if we take a look at the stuff that's still in there, it's not done yet. Therefore, we have to account for that. So the stuff that's still in there, we're going to say it was 100% complete in terms of materials because we assume the materials went in there at the beginning, and therefore all the materials are in there even though we're not done cutting the glove. And of the stuff, the conversion, which is the direct labor and the materials, the stuff that makes it into the glove from the leather, is not quite done because it's still in process. And therefore we had to come up with this percent. 50 times the 10 gave us our 5,000. So here's our equivalent units for direct materials. Here's our equivalent units for conversion. And we're going to use those in the next step. Next step, we're going to look at the total dollar amounts for direct material and direct labor. So for direct material, we started with 50,000 in work in process. And then we put in another 90,000. Again, these are dollars, not units, as we were talking about before. Gives us a total of 140. Then we're going to divide that by the 50,000 here. Where did that 50,000 come from? It's this equivalent units on the 50,000. Sorry, this equivalent units here. So we're going to divide that by the 50, gets us to 280. Then we're going to take the conversion, the direct material, the overhead, which is the 7.2 plus the $193.5 that we spent during the period, gives us a 207. We're going to divide that by the 45,000. Where does the 45,000? It comes from this number here, 45,000. And that gives us our $4.46 per equivalent unit of conversion. If we add those two up, we come up with the 726. Our total cost is this plus this, or the 347 for both direct material and conversion. Moving on to objective number 6, analyze the total production cost for the department under the weighted average method of process costing. So now we're going to take the cost of goods completed and transferred during March. So this is stuff that we're done with, went from the cutting department. All the fingers are cut out of the glove. It's going to the stitching department now. You'll recall that there were 40,000 units there. And again, where does that come from? If we go back up here, it's the 40,000 that basically got transferred out. These got transferred out totally. They were completely started and completed, we're thinking about in the weighted average method on both direct material and conversion. Therefore, we can just take that entire 40,000 and multiply it times the total of 726, which we got from this slide, the 726 here. Then we're going to do the second piece, which is the cost remaining in work in process. Direct material, 10,000, and conversion, 5. Once again, where do those numbers come from? If we go all the way back up here, we have the stuff that's still in there at the end is here. We had 10,000 for direct materials, 5 for conversion. So that's where those numbers come from. Then we're going to use the 2.8 and the 445. So we've got the 10,000 times the dollar of 2.8 per equivalent units gives us the 28. We've got the 5,000 in conversion times the 446 gives us the 22.3. If we add those together, we get up to 50.30. If we add the outer column, we come up with the 347, which that equals our total units. So we check that off. Why are we checking that off? because that equals our total cost here. So if we look at that in a completed worksheet, we can we'll recap this in objective number 6, where we're going to prepare a departmental production report under the weighted average process cost. So we can see basically what we did on the whole process here. So first we did the units as a physical flow, where we had the 20,000 units, not dollars, plus the ones started during the period gives us 50,000 that we need to account for. Then we converted that calculation into units that were completed and transferred out versus stuff that's still in our department, the cutting department. And that comes out to the same 50,000 that we need to account for. And we're going to assume that these units, because of the weighted average method, we kind of assume that they were started and completed. Therefore, or we can assume that it averages out, so we can make that assumption that they were started and completed. Therefore, we're gonna make the assumption that the direct materials were totally started and completed during this period, and the conversion was totally started and completed. So the equivalent units would be the same as the total units here. On the other hand, the units that are still in process, we're going to say they're completely finished for materials because of 100% of the materials went in at the beginning, but they're only 50% for conversion. Therefore, we came up with 50,000 direct materials for equivalent units, and that's the same as total units. But the conversion is only 45,000 for equivalent units versus the total units. Then we took the costs. These are the dollars that we spent. Once again, we know how much we spent during the period for direct materials and conversion, which includes the direct labor and the overhead. We know what we spent for it. It adds up to a total of 347. We just don't know how to apply it to what department, meaning what process, meaning how much should go to the cutting department, which is still in the cutting department work in process, versus how much should go to the stitching department, which had been transferred out. Therefore, we're going to divide this by the direct materials divided by the the cost, the 140 divided by the units, the equivalent units here, and I should be taking this number. The equivalent units gives us the 280. We're going to take the total cost for conversion and divide that by the equivalent units, which is the 45, gives us this number. If we add these across, we come up with this number. Then we're going to take the 40,000 here. That's the stuff that got transferred out. So remember, that comes from this number. They got transferred out, times the 7, which comes from this number, gives us the 294. That's how much of the total 340 that we're going to apply to the amount that is now in the the stitching department rather than our department, the cutting department. The stuff that's still in our department, which is this 10,000 here, has equivalent units of 10 and 5. Therefore, the direct materials, this 10,000 comes from here, times the 28, which comes from here, gives us the 28,000. The 5,000 conversion comes from here, times the 446, which comes from here, gives us the 22,3. If we add those two up, we come up to 50,003. If we add the outer, it comes up to 347. We can check that off because it adds out to our total cost that we needed to allocate. So our goal ultimately has always been, we're trying to allocate this number in dollars out to the amount that's remaining in our department, the cutting department, versus the amount that went out to the stitching department. And that's it for this one.